Hello and welcome to the Wayside Times. In the 1780s and 1790s, Americans had just emerged from the Revolutionary War. They wanted better lives, and they were looking west. As a result, financial speculation on land in the new territories became a huge business. Part of why it became so big was that on the surface it was very simple. All you had to do to get fabulously wealthy was find some investors, pool your money with theirs, and buy a large tract of land being sold by the government or another group of speculators. You could then break it up into smaller plots and sell it to settlers, or wait and pass the whole thing on to another group of speculators at a higher price. Despite how seductive this idea was, speculation was a risky business, and many people lost everything. See, there wasn't much stopping people from squatting on your land, and there was always the threat of hostile Native Americans, which made settlers much less willing to pay the high prices speculators were asking. The geography of these new territories was not as well known as it is today either, so multiple valid claims might exist for the same plot of land. Maladministration was also a large factor, and factional affiliations and corruption could help or hinder a speculator's chances. Remember, this is about 100 years before the establishment of the civil service in the United States, and many official positions were decided by patronage. Many speculators would go bankrupt in lawsuits from their settlers or other speculators, or would lose everything trying to sell land that had already been settled. But this tendency for bankruptcy could also help one's chances, like it did for the subject of today's video, William Cooper. Cooper and a partner pooled their money in the mid-1780s and used it to purchase a firm that had gone bankrupt speculating in upstate New York. This area was booming at the time from a flood of settlers coming out of New England. This firm had claims over tens of thousands of acres in Otsego County, but ended up in a quagmire of litigation that wouldn't even be over until after Cooper's death. Cooper had a two-pronged approach to this new business empire. He first hired Alexander Hamilton to handle the litigation. Yes, that Hamilton, of musical fame, who at the time was known as the finest lawyer in New York State and one of the most prominent in the country. While Hamilton was hammering other claimants in court, Cooper played realpolitik. At the end of the day, the person living on land had the best claim to it, so Cooper immediately began selling off his stakes in Otsego County to settlers. It was these plots that he was to develop into Cooperstown. This was a huge gamble, but it paid off big for Cooper, and by 1790s, he was incredibly rich and internationally known. William Cooper was a product of this turbulent time in more ways than one, though. The adoption of the Constitution had hardly settled the political and cultural debates that were raging in the early United States. One of those debates was whether or not America would develop the rigid hierarchical class system that was present in Britain and most of Europe at the time. In fact, America already had a class of would-be aristocrats, waiting to take up the mantle as rulers of the fledgling republic. Many of the members of this class were plantation owners in the South. However, New England and the Middle States contributed plenty of merchants, businessmen, and landowners alike to fill the roles of this emerging class. One of these would-be aristocrats was William Cooper. Cooper, along with his lawyer Hamilton, subscribed to the Federalist view that society should be ruled by wealthy men of leisure, who made their income from some passive source of income, like interest earned on money lent or rents from property. Federalists like Hamilton Cooper believed it was only these financially independent few who could rule the nation without the pressure of having to earn an income at the same time. Cooper was quite the innovator when it came to aristocracy. Instead of merely being a rent seeker, Cooper tried to develop Cooperstown to tap into the self-interests of his settlers. Rather than merely renting land, Cooper sold it to his settlers outright, knowing that people will work harder on a plot of land they own than on one they rent. To reduce the risk of squatting and price fluctuation, Cooper would sell large tracts at a time at reasonable prices with long financing terms, which helped reduce the risk of settling on his land. He also made sure to stay engaged with his settlers. He would help them find markets, viable products, or synergies with other members of the community. This was hardly the kind of heavy-handed, top-down style aristocracy that was present in much of Europe at the time. In Cooper's own words, By the simplest measure of letting things take their own course, I find my interest and that of the whole community promoted. And with this, we can see that despite his desire for aristocracy, he was still Republican at heart. Cooper's plans wouldn't work out, however. With the end of the 1790s and the beginning of the 19th century, cultural and political winds in the U.S. began to shift away from Cooper and other Federalists. A foreign observer in the U.S. at the time noted that Americans dread everything that preaches constraint, and that natural freedom is what pleases them. And so it was in Cooperstown as well. Soon Cooper became overwhelmed by the number of newcomers. He quickly lost control. Crime and violence rose to the point where Cooper himself was even caned in his own town in 1807. How far he had fallen. And his financial situation was hardly better. Cooper died in 1809, and within 15 years of his death, his entire estate had been liquidated to pay off his debts, the debts of his children, as well as some of the litigation that arose around Cooperstown and his business enterprise. Although his son James Fenimore Cooper became a novelist, the rest of Cooper's children fell victim to the same fantasies of grandeur that Cooper had suffered from. Only James and his sister Amy survived through their 30s, with the other 5 children dying from a variety of causes, but were generally centered around a life of heavy partying combined with financial stress. Cooperstown would continue on without the Coopers, eventually becoming famous for baseball, as we know it today, although we have an opportunity to change that. Every time you like or share this video, or one of you subscribes to my channel, we can make great stories like that of William Cooper a little bit more known. So click that thumbs up, share that link, and hit the notification bell. This has been The Wayside Times. I'll see you next time. Bye.